Hello, Medical Qigong Master David J. Coon, my father. I'm Bella, and today we're going to be answering some questions. Well, technically he will be. Qigong and Your Brain.
Bum, bum, bum.
Okay. Is Qigong good for your brain? Or in this case, more specifically, would be good for like my brain?
It would be very good for her brain. Also good for your brain. So in general, because the brain is a complicated instrument, but in general, when we think about the brain, we think about our ability to think. We might think about the spinal cord and the brain connection there, and we might think about balance. When we think about the back part of the brain, when we think about the front of the brain, we call the frontal lobe, we might think in terms of our ability to focus, our ability to concentrate. When we talk about the very top of our brain, we're talking about that part of the brain that is always analyzing and judging and trying to figure everything out. It's very busy, and in my business, we call it the monkey mind. That's where you're very stressed and your mind's always going. So when we practice Qigong, we're always working with bringing our focus. If you've ever seen people from India, not everybody, but some of the folks from India, where they'll put the little dot between the eyebrows here, this is related to what sometimes is called the third eye, and it has to do with your ability to focus. So we see practices like an archer's practice, like either in Zen archery or in Qigong practice, and it's about the ability to focus and concentrate. And we have certain sounds that we use to focus and concentrate. And some of our movements are very simple. We reach up, we breathe. But there are other movements where we maybe have a teacup. We pretend we have a teacup on our hand and we're trying not to drop it. In order to do this, you actually have to be using your brain and paying attention. Now I'm having a conversation with you and still doing my movement. That's more complicated, right? So the more complicated you make it, if I did this with a bottle of water on my head, it would cause me to have to focus even more. So is it good for the brain? Yes, it is, because use it or lose it. So we practice balance. We practice the ability to focus. We practice the ability to lower our blood pressure, which starts in the brain by calming down this part of the brain, getting into this part of the brain called the frontal lobe, and then actually bringing our concentration in our mind and our rest and digest down here into our lower belly, which in Western terminology is now being called the second brain, and getting it down here and calming it down and relaxing everything. So is it good for the brain? Yes. And what's good for the brain is good for the whole body.
What are three, let's say, benefits of Qigong, like specifically like for my brain?
So just name some of them right there. I'll reiterate them. Focus, number one, okay? Because if you can't focus on something, anything, I often tell people I'm that weird kind of person. I was like the little karate kid, Daniel. Only in this case, David, but little Daniel, she didn't watch the Karate Kid. We'll have to show that to her later. She's seen bits and pieces of it, but anyway, he'd like drop the jacket and then pick it up, drop the wash, wax on, wax off, all of this kind of stuff. And we make jokes about that. And then, he stands on the pier and he's doing his like version of crane stance and stuff. Anyway, some of us love that. Some of us thought it was silly. But anyway, there's a practice of focus going on there. There's a practice of balance going on there. And in order to practice balance, you have to practice your ability to focus. All good for the brain. If you start playing with those kinds of things, you're also going to change your breathing patterns. And there are breathing patterns that are associated with stress, and there are breathing patterns associated with relaxation. Relaxation heals the body. But let's be very clear, very clear. We have to be very clear. That doesn't just mean lying on the couch doing nothing all the time. Okay, let's just be clear about this. All right. It's about being able to make a movement and then be very quiet for a moment and then go to stillness and then go to a movement. Who's in control of that? Your mind your brain, and then you make it good for your body.
Make you feel.
How does Qigong make you feel? Qigong can make you feel warm. It can make you feel happy. It can make you start you off with feeling sad because maybe as you start practicing the Qigong, some sadness is coming up. But in the middle of that sadness, if you have some practices, you can immediately turn to those practices and make that sadness turn into, say, happiness or a feeling of love or a feeling of self-empowerment. All of those things are possible if you know what you're doing.
Optimize my brain.
Optimize your brain, practice everything I just shared with you. Practice your ability to focus, practice your ability to control your breathing, practice your ability to practice balance, practice your ability to stay mindful while moving, practice your ability to stay mindful while practicing stillness. Those are all places that I would tell people to begin.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.